You are losing control of your life every single day, and you don't even realize it. Every time someone cuts you off in traffic and you explode. Every time a text message ruins your entire afternoon. Every time a comment at work sends you spiraling for hours, you're giving away your power. You are handing control of your emotions, your decisions, and your destiny to external triggers that don't deserve that authority. But here's what changes today. You're about to learn the 24-hour rule, a neurological method rooted in how your brain actually processes threats versus reality. This isn't theory. This is the exact system that creates a mandatory delay between what happens to you and how you respond. Master this, and you master yourself. Ignore this, and you'll remain a puppet to every trigger around you. Let's begin. Train your mind to not react. The 24-hour rule that changes everything on Full Audiobook. Chapter 1. Your brain is wired to overreact, and that's the problem. You're not broken. You're not weak. You are not fundamentally flawed, but you are wired to overreact, and until you understand why, you will continue to sabotage yourself in ways you don't even recognize. Let me explain what's happening inside your skull every single time someone criticizes you, cuts you off in traffic, sends you a passive-aggressive text, or challenges you in front of others. Your amygdala, a small, almond-shaped structure deep in your brain, is taking control. And when it does, you lose. The amygdala is your primitive brain. It evolved millions of years ago when humans faced actual physical threats. Predators, rival tribes, life-or-death situations that required instant action. No thinking, no evaluating options. Just react, fight or flight. Survive now, process later. This system kept your ancestors alive. It's the reason you exist today. But here's the problem. Your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a sarcastic comment from your coworker. It cannot distinguish between a physical threat and an emotional one. To your amygdala, they're the same thing. Both trigger the identical survival response. So when someone questions your competence in a meeting, your amygdala registers it as an attack. Within milliseconds, faster than conscious thought, it floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes. Your muscles tense. Blood flow redirects away from your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, long-term planning, and impulse control, and rushes to your limbs, preparing you to fight or run. This is called an amygdala hijack. And in that state, you are biochemically incapable of making good decisions. You are literally too flooded with stress hormones to think clearly. This is not a metaphor. This is neuroscience. This is why you say things you regret. This is why you send emails you wish you could unsend. This is why you escalate arguments you should have walked away from. This is why you make impulsive decisions that create consequences you'll deal with for months or years. Your brain is wired to overreact. Your brain is wired to overreact. And until you interrupt that circuit, you will keep losing. Let me give you a specific example. You're in a meeting. You've prepared for days. You present your idea to the team, and then someone, maybe a colleague, maybe your boss, questions it, not even aggressively, just asks, "Are we sure this is the right approach?" In that moment, everything changes. Your face flushes. Your jaw clenches. Your inner voice starts screaming. They're challenging me in front of everyone. They're trying to make me look incompetent. I have to defend this right now, or I'll look weak. So you snap back. Your tone is sharp. Your words are defensive. You double down on your idea instead of considering the feedback. You turn a simple question into a confrontation. And now the entire room is uncomfortable. The meeting derails. Your idea, which might have been good, is now irrelevant. All anyone will remember is your reaction. That's the amygdala hijack. That single moment just cost you credibility. It damaged your relationship with the person who questioned you. It made everyone else in the room hesitant to give you honest feedback in the future. One reaction, permanent consequences. And here's what makes this devastating. You thought you were being strong. You thought defending yourself immediately was the right move. You thought hesitation would make you look weak. But you were wrong. You weren't operating from strength. You were operating from a triggered state. You were a puppet, and the trigger was pulling your strings. The person who questions you is not your enemy. The trigger is not the threat. The real threat is your inability to pause between the trigger and your response. That's the battleground. That's where you're losing your life, piece by piece, reaction by reaction. Now let's talk about the lie you've been sold. Society glorifies the instant comeback, the clapback, the don't let anyone disrespect you mentality. Social media rewards the fastest, sharpest reply. We celebrate people who destroy their critics in real time. We treat speed and response as evidence of confidence and strength. This is a trap. Speed is not strength. Speed and reaction is weakness disguised as confidence. When you respond immediately to an emotional trigger, you're proving that the trigger controls you. You're demonstrating that external circumstances dictate your behavior. You're announcing to the world that you can be manipulated by anyone who knows which buttons to push. Think about it. If I know that criticizing you in public will make you defensive and aggressive every single time, I can control you. I can derail your meetings. I can make you look unprofessional. I can damage your reputation. All I have to do is trigger you and watch you destroy yourself. You're predictable, and predictable people are powerless. The person who responds immediately is controlled by the trigger. The person who waits owns the outcome. Read that again. The person who responds immediately is controlled by the trigger. The person who waits owns the outcome. This is not theory. This is the fundamental distinction between people who master their lives and people who are mastered by their circumstances. You will learn to insert time between stimulus and response. That insertion, that pause, that delay, that refusal to react immediately is where your power lives. It's where you reclaim control from your amygdala. It's where you stop being a reactive animal and become a strategic human being. But first, you have to accept the hard truth. Every time you've reacted impulsively, every time you've let your emotions drive your decisions, every time you've said or done something you later regretted, that was your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. You were not in control. Your amygdala was. This is not an excuse. This is not permission to keep making the same mistakes. This is information. Information you can use to change. Because once you understand that your brain is wired to overreact, you can stop blaming yourself for past reactions and start building a system that prevents future ones. Your amygdala will never go away. You will never stop having triggers. You will never reach a point where nothing bothers you. But you can learn to interrupt the hijack. You can create a space between the trigger and your response. You can train yourself to pause when your biology is screaming at you to react. That training starts with understanding the exact mechanism that will save you from yourself. It's called the 24-hour rule. And in the next chapter, you're going to learn why waiting is not weakness. It's the ultimate weapon. Chapter 2, the 24-hour rule. Why waiting is the ultimate weapon. Let's get straight to it. The 24-hour rule is the simplest, most powerful psychological tool you will ever use. And here it is. When you're triggered, when someone says something that makes your blood boil, when a situation demands what feels like an immediate response, when your emotions are screaming at you to act right now, you don't. You wait. 24 hours. No exceptions. Not a text message. Not an email. Not a phone call. Not a confrontation. Not a decision. Nothing. You feel the trigger, you acknowledge it, and then you create a mandatory delay before you respond. That's it. That's the rule. And before you tell me that's impossible, before you say, but what if it's urgent? Before you argue that waiting makes you look weak, understand this. Your resistance to this rule is exactly why you need it. You need to react immediately is the problem. Your belief that speed equals strength is what's been destroying your relationships, your career, and your peace of mind. The 24-hour rule works because it does one thing your willpower cannot do on its own. It forces your biology to cooperate with your goals. Here's what's happening in your brain right now. When you get triggered, your amygdala, the primitive emotional part of your brain, floods your system with stress hormones. Cortisol, adrenaline. These chemicals are designed for survival, not strategy. They prepare you to fight or run, not to think clearly or make intelligent decisions. And here's the key. These hormones don't disappear in 5 minutes. They don't vanish after you take a few deep breaths or count to 10. Research shows that cortisol takes 18 to 24 hours to fully metabolize out of your system. That means the anger you're feeling right now, the hurt, the defensiveness, the urgency, it's not just emotional. It's chemical. Your judgment is biochemically compromised. Think about that. Every time you react within the first 24 hours of being triggered, you're making decisions while your brain chemistry is actively working against you. You're trying to see clearly through a fog of stress hormones. You're trying to be rational while your body is in survival mode. It doesn't work. It cannot work. The 24-hour rule removes you from that compromised state. It says, I will not make permanent decisions with temporary emotions. I will not respond to this situation until my biology has returned to baseline. I will not give my power away to a triggered state. By waiting 24 hours, you're not avoiding the situation. You're not being passive. You're not letting them win. You're doing something far more powerful. You're letting your prefrontal cortex come back online. That's the part of your brain that thinks strategically, considers consequences, evaluates options, and makes decisions aligned with your long-term goals. The person who reacts in the first hour sees one option: strike back. The person who waits 24 hours sees 10 options. Better options. Strategic options. Options that actually solve problems instead of creating new ones. Let me be clear about what this looks like in practice. Your boss criticizes you in a meeting. Your immediate instinct is to defend yourself, to explain, to prove them wrong. The 24-hour rule says, don't. Not yet. Feel the trigger. Acknowledge the anger or embarrassment. Then wait. Go back to your desk. Do your work. Let the day pass. Let the hormones settle. 24 hours later, you'll see what you couldn't see in that heated moment. Maybe the criticism was valid, and you can use it to improve. Maybe it was unfair, but responding defensively would have made you look worse. Maybe there's a deeper issue that needs addressing through a private conversation, not a public reaction. You couldn't access any of these insights while triggered, but after 24 hours, clarity. Someone texts you something insulting. Your fingers are hovering over the keyboard, ready to fire back. The 24-hour rule says, put the phone down. Walk away. Let a full day pass. Don't respond. Don't even draft a response and save it. Just wait. Here's what happens when you do this consistently. First, half of the things that triggered you won't even matter 24 hours later. You'll realize the comment was petty, the situation was minor, or the person was projecting their own issues. Second, for the things that do still matter after 24 hours, your response will be infinitely better. Calmer, more strategic, more effective. This is not about suppressing your feelings. This is not about pretending you're not hurt or angry. Feel whatever you feel, but refuse to let those feelings write your responses. Refuse to let cortisol make decisions that your rational mind will have to live with. Waiting is not weakness. This is the lie that keeps people trapped in reactivity. Society has conditioned you to believe that immediate response equals strength, that hesitation equals cowardice, that if you don't defend yourself right now, you're letting people walk all over you. This is garbage. This is the mindset of people who are controlled by their triggers. Real strength is control. Real power is choice. And you cannot have either when you're reacting from a triggered state. The person who waits is not weak. They're strategic. They're disciplined. They're playing a different game than the reactive person. Think about the people you actually respect. The leaders, the mentors, the people who have built something meaningful. Do they fly off the handle? Do they fire back immediately when provoked? Do they make impulsive decisions based on emotional spikes? No. They pause. They consider. They wait. And then they respond with precision. That's what the 24-hour rule gives you. Precision. The ability to choose your response instead of being hijacked by your reaction. React, and you're predictable. Everyone knows exactly how to manipulate you. Just push the right button and watch you explode. Respond after 24 hours, and you're unpredictable in the best way. You're measured. You're in control. You're powerful. Here's your assignment. Starting today, commit to the 24-hour rule for every emotional trigger. Not some triggers. All of them. When you feel that heat rising, when your body is screaming at you to react right now, Stop. Create the delay. Let 24 hours pass. Then, and only then, decide how you want to respond. This is not optional if you want to master yourself. This is the foundation. You cannot build self-control on top of reactive patterns. You have to interrupt the circuit. You have to give your biology time to reset. 24 hours. Every time, you now have the rule. But knowing the rule and living the rule are completely different things. In the next chapter, we're going to face the harsh reality of what instant reactions actually cost you, and why that cost is far higher than you've ever calculated. Chapter 3. The invisible cost of instant reactions. Here's what nobody tells you about instant reactions. They feel free in the moment, but you pay for them forever. Every single time you fire back immediately, every time you make a decision while triggered, every time you let emotion drive your behavior, you're creating a debt. And that debt compounds with interest. Over time, let me be brutally clear about what this looks like. You send an angry email. It takes you 2 minutes to write. You feel vindicated, powerful, justified. You hit send. That emotional release lasts maybe 10 seconds. Maybe 20 if you really let yourself enjoy it. And then it's over. The satisfaction evaporates. But that email? It's permanent. It's documentation. It's evidence. It lives in someone's inbox forever. It can be forwarded, screenshot, brought up in performance reviews, referenced in conversations you'll never hear. That 2-minute emotional release just created a piece of evidence that will work against you for months or years. That's the invisible cost. You don't see it immediately. You might not see it for weeks, but it's there, accruing, waiting, and eventually you will pay. The same pattern plays out in every area of your life. You escalate an argument with your partner because you're triggered. The fight lasts 30 minutes. You say things you don't mean. You attack instead of communicate. And when it's over, when you've both exhausted yourselves, the issue isn't resolved. It's just buried under a fresh layer of resentment and hurt. That single argument just damaged the foundation of trust in your relationship. Your partner is now a little less likely to be vulnerable with you, a little less willing to share difficult things, a little more guarded. You can't see this damage immediately, but it's there, and it accumulates, reaction by reaction, fight by fight, until one day you wake up and wonder why your relationship feels distant, why communication feels impossible, why you can't seem to connect anymore. The invisible cost compounds daily. The invisible cost compounds daily. Let me give you a specific example that happens every single day in workplaces around the world. A professional, let's call him Marcus, receives an email from his boss. The email contains criticism about a project Marcus has been leading. The tone is direct, maybe too direct. Marcus reads it once. His chest tightens. His face gets hot. His hand starts shaking. Within 60 seconds, Marcus has his phone out. He's typing a response. Not an email, a text message. Because email feels too slow when you're this angry. His text is defensive, sarcastic, dripping with passive aggression. Interesting feedback, considering you approved this approach 3 weeks ago. But sure, let's blame the execution instead of the direction. He hit send. 15 seconds of emotional release. He feels better. He told his boss exactly what he thought. He stood up for himself. He didn't let the criticism go unanswered. Except here's what Marcus doesn't know. His boss reads the text, and instead of responding, he forwards it to HR. Not to get Marcus in trouble, just to document a concerning pattern of defensive behavior. HR files it away. Months pass. Marcus forgets about the text entirely. He moves on to other projects, other conflicts. 6 months later, there's a leadership position opening up. Marcus applies. He's qualified. He's been with the company for years. He's done good work. But during the promotion discussion, someone from HR pulls up that text message. We have concerns about Marcus's ability to receive feedback professionally. And just like that, Marcus hits a career ceiling. Not because of his skills, not because of his work quality, because of a text message he sent in 15 seconds while triggered. One reaction, permanent consequence. This happens every single day. To people who think they're being strong. To people who believe instant responses prove confidence. to people who have never calculated the actual cost of their reactivity. Here's what makes this even more insidious. It's not just one email. It's not just one argument. It's not just one impulsive decision. It's the pattern. And patterns are what people remember. Patterns are what define you. React once, and people forgive it. Everyone has a bad day. Everyone loses their cool occasionally. One reaction is an anomaly. But react twice, and people notice. React 3 times, and people start forming opinions. React consistently, and people categorize you. They file you away in their mental database under a label you never chose but can't escape. You become the person who can't take criticism, the person who always gets defensive, the person who loses their temper in meetings, the person who makes everything a confrontation. Your reputation crystallizes around your worst moments, not your best work, not your kindest gestures, not your most brilliant ideas, your reactive patterns. And once you're categorized, it's almost impossible to change people's perception, because now they're looking for evidence that confirms what they already believe about you. Every small reaction reinforces the label. Every emotional response becomes proof that this is just who they are. Your reputation isn't built on your best moments. It's built on your reactive ones. Your reputation isn't built on your best moments. It's built on your reactive ones. This is the truth that no one wants to hear. But it's true in every relationship, every workplace, every social circle you'll ever be part of. Think about the people in your life right now. The ones who are always dramatic. The ones who can't have a simple conversation without it becoming an argument. The ones who take everything personally. You know exactly who I'm talking about. And here's the uncomfortable question. How do they see themselves? They probably don't think they're reactive. They probably believe they're just passionate or honest or not afraid to speak their mind. They've rationalized their patterns. They've convinced themselves that their instant reactions are actually strengths. But everyone around them knows the truth. Everyone sees the pattern. Everyone has learned to handle them carefully, to avoid certain topics, to keep them at arm's length. Don't be that person. Don't build a reputation on reactivity and then wonder why opportunities don't come your way. Don't damage relationships in seconds and expect to repair them in minutes. Don't create permanent evidence of temporary emotions and act surprised when it comes back to haunt you. The invisible cost is real. It's accruing every single time you react without thinking. Every email sent in anger. Every argument escalated unnecessarily. Every decision made while triggered. You're building a resume of your worst moments. And that resume is what people reference when they decide whether to trust you, promote you, stay with you, or invest in you. But here's the good news. The pattern can be broken. The debt can stop accumulating. The invisible cost can be eliminated entirely. You just have to learn to do one thing that feels impossible, but isn't. Implement the 24-hour rule in real time, under pressure when it matters most. That's exactly what we're covering next. The specific, tactical steps that turn the 24-hour rule from a concept you understand into a practice you live. Chapter 4. How to implement the 24-hour rule in real time. Understanding the 24-hour rule is one thing. Actually using it when you're triggered, when your emotions are volcanic, when everything in you is screaming to react right now. That's something else entirely. This chapter is about the exact implementation, the specific steps, the tactical moves that turn theory into practice. Because here's the reality. You will be tested. Today, tomorrow, this week, someone will say something that makes your blood boil. A situation will arise that demands what feels like an immediate response. Your finger will hover over the send button. Your mouth will open to fire back. And in that moment, you'll need more than good intentions. You'll need a system. Step 1. Recognize the trigger immediately. This is not optional. This is the foundation of everything that follows. The moment, and I mean the exact moment, you feel the shift in your body, you must notice it. Your pulse quickens. Your jaw clenches. Your chest tightens. Heat rises in your face. Your thoughts start racing, building a case, preparing your defense or attack. That's your signal. That's your amygdala activating. And the instant you feel it, you label it. Out loud if possible. I'm triggered right now. I'm about to react. This is an amygdala hijack. Why does this work? Because the act of labeling engages your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain. Neuroscience research shows that when you name an emotion, you reduce its intensity. It's called affect labeling. By simply saying, "I'm triggered," you're already beginning to interrupt the hijack. You're creating a tiny gap between the stimulus and your response. And that gap is everything. You cannot control what you don't acknowledge. You cannot control what you don't acknowledge. If you don't recognize that you're triggered, you have zero chance of managing your response. Recognition is the first line of defense. Master this, and everything else becomes possible. Most people skip this step. They're so identified with their emotional state that they don't even realize they're in one. They think their reaction is justified, proportional, necessary. They don't see the trigger. They only see the threat. And that's why they stay trapped in reactive patterns forever. Not you. You're going to notice. Every single time. The heat, the tension, the racing thoughts. You're going to catch it early, label it clearly, and refuse to proceed until you've acknowledged what's happening in your nervous system. Step 2. Create physical distance from the response mechanism. Immediately. Not in 5 minutes. Not after you just read the message one more time. Right now. If it's a text message that triggered you, put your phone in another room. Not face down on the table. Not in your pocket. In another room. Physically separate yourself from the device that allows you to react. If it's an email, close your laptop. Shut it completely. Walk away from your desk. Go to a different location. The trigger loses power when you remove yourself from the immediate environment. Distance creates choice. If it's a face-to-face conversation, someone says something that triggers you in real time. You use these exact words. "I need to think about this. Let's revisit it tomorrow." Then you leave. You don't explain further. You don't justify. You don't apologize for needing time. You state your boundary and you enforce it with action. This will feel uncomfortable. It will feel weak. It will feel like you're running away. Let it feel that way. Your feelings in the triggered state are not accurate assessments of reality. They're chemical reactions designed to make you survive immediate threats. But this is not a survival situation. This is a moment that requires strategy, not speed. Physical separation breaks the reaction loop. Your brain is wired to complete patterns. If the trigger is right in front of you, the phone, the person, the laptop, your brain will complete the pattern by reacting. But when you remove yourself, you interrupt the circuit. You force a reset. I've seen people transform their entire lives with this one step. The executive who started leaving his phone in his car during lunch so he couldn't fire off angry emails. The parent who began taking a walk around the block every time their teenager said something that triggered them. The couple who implemented a 24-hour pause button rule for any conversation that started escalating. Distance creates choice. Distance creates choice. Without it, you're just a puppet on strings, reacting to whatever stimulus appears in front of you. Step 3. Use the 24 hours to investigate, not ruminate. This is critical. The 24-hour rule is not 24 hours of stewing in your anger. It's not 24 hours of rehearsing the perfect comeback. It's not 24 hours of building your case about why you're right and they're wrong. That's rumination. And rumination keeps you triggered. It's just reaction in slow motion. You're still letting the trigger control you. You're just torturing yourself for a full day instead of responding immediately. Investigation is different. Investigation is asking better questions. Questions that shift your focus from defending your position to understanding the situation. Questions that move you from emotion to strategy. Write these down. Right now. Put them in your phone. You'll need them. What is this really about? Not the surface issue. The deeper one. Is this about the criticism you received? Or is it about your fear of being seen as incompetent? Is this about what they said? Or is it about a wound that's been there for years? What outcome do I actually want? Not revenge. Not vindication. Not proving you're right. What outcome serves your long-term goals? What result would you be proud of in 6 months? What would the person I'm becoming do here? Not the person you've been. Not the reactive version of yourself that got you into this pattern. The person you're building. The person who has mastered the 24-hour rule. What would that person do? Answer these questions honestly. Write your answers down. Don't just think about them. Writing engages different parts of your brain and creates clarity that thinking alone cannot produce. Here's what happens when you do this. By hour 6, the intensity has dropped. By hour 12, you're seeing perspectives you couldn't access before. By hour 18, you're questioning whether a response is even necessary. By hour 24, you don't want to react the way you did in hour 1. You have a strategy. You have options. You have clarity. By hour 24, you'll have a strategy, not just a feeling. Strategy wins. Strategy wins. Every single time. The person who reacts in hour 1 is fighting a battle. The person who responds in hour 24 has already won the war. Because they're no longer controlled by the trigger. They're in control of themselves. You now have the 3 steps. Recognition, distance, investigation. This is your system. This is how you implement the 24-hour rule in real time. But knowing the system isn't enough. Because the moment you try to use it, you'll face massive resistance from the people around you and from something even more powerful, social pressure. That's exactly what we're addressing next. The external forces that will try to break your commitment to the 24-hour rule and why you must resist them at all costs. Chapter 5. The social pressure to react and why you must resist it. The hardest part of the 24-hour rule isn't the waiting. It's the social pressure that tells you waiting makes you weak. It's the voices, external and internal, that scream at you to respond right now, or lose respect, lose face, lose the battle. These voices are everywhere, and they are lying to you. We live in a culture that worships speed, the instant comeback, the viral clapback, the don't ever let anyone disrespect you mentality. Social media has turned reaction time into a competitive sport. The person who responds fastest wins the crowd. The person who waits is labeled weak, passive, or worse, irrelevant. This is the environment you're operating in, and it's toxic. This culture is producing a generation of people who are emotionally bankrupt, relationally destroyed, and professionally stuck. Because they've been conditioned to believe that speed equals strength. That hesitation equals cowardice. That if you don't defend yourself immediately, you're letting people walk all over you. The pressure to react immediately is not wisdom. It's social conditioning, and it's designed to keep you reactive, predictable, and controllable. When you react instantly, you're easy to manipulate. Anyone who knows which buttons to push can make you dance like a puppet. You're not powerful, you're predictable. And predictable people never win the long game. Let me show you exactly how this plays out. Someone posts something about you on social media. Maybe it's a criticism. Maybe it's a misrepresentation of something you said. Maybe it's a direct attack. And within minutes, your phone is lighting up. Friends are texting you. Did you see this? Are you going to respond? You can't let them get away with that. Your notifications are piling up. People are weighing in, some defending you, some piling on, and the pressure builds. Everyone is watching. Everyone is waiting to see what you'll do. The social expectation is clear: respond. Now, defend yourself. Clap back. Win the crowd. So you do. You type out a response. It's sharp. It's clever. It dismantles their argument. You post it, and immediately the validation floods in. Likes, comments. You destroyed them. That's how you handle it. You feel vindicated. You feel powerful. You won. Except you didn't. 3 days later, someone screenshots your response. They remove the context. They share it in a different group where people don't know the full story. Now your words look aggressive, petty, or defensive. The narrative shifts. The crowd that cheered you on 3 days ago, they've moved to the next drama. They're not here to defend you now. You're left holding the consequences of a reaction you made to satisfy an audience that was never actually on your side. Fast reactions feel like wins until you count the cost. Fast reactions feel like wins until you count the cost. This is the social media trap. And it's not just online. The same pressure exists in every area of your life. At work, when someone challenges you in a meeting and everyone's eyes turn to you, waiting to see if you'll defend yourself or stay silent. In your family, when someone makes a comment at dinner and the whole table goes quiet, watching to see if you'll let it slide or fire back. In your relationship, when your partner says something hurtful and the unspoken rule is stand up for yourself right now or you're a doormat. The pressure is real. The expectation is real. And it will break you if you let it. Because the crowd doesn't care about your long-term success. The crowd doesn't care about your relationships. The crowd doesn't care about your reputation 6 months from now. The crowd wants entertainment. They want drama. They want to watch you react so they can feel something for 30 seconds before they scroll to the next thing. You're not performing for the crowd. You're building a life. And those are two completely different objectives. Here's the truth that will set you free. The people worth impressing are not impressed by your ability to clap back. They're impressed by your ability to stay calm under pressure. The people who actually matter, the mentors, the leaders, the partners who build you up instead of tearing you down, they're watching something entirely different. They're not watching to see if you'll react. They're watching to see if you'll stay in control. Leaders don't react. Think about the leaders you actually respect. The ones who have built something meaningful. The ones who command rooms not through volume, but through presence. Do they lose their temper when challenged? Do they fire off angry responses to critics? Do they get pulled into public battles with every person who disagrees with them? No. They pause. They consider. They respond strategically, or they don't respond at all, because they understand that restraint is power. Parents who raise resilient, emotionally healthy kids don't react to every tantrum, every outburst, every test of boundaries. They stay calm. They wait. They respond from a place of intention, not emotion. That's what teaches children emotional regulation. Not lectures about feelings, but modeling what self-control actually looks like under pressure. People who build lasting relationships don't react to every trigger, every misunderstanding, every moment of tension. They create space. They let emotions settle. They address issues from a place of connection, not defensiveness. The strongest relationships aren't built on never having conflict. They're built on how conflict is handled. And reactive patterns destroy relationships. Responsive patterns strengthen them. When you resist the social pressure to react, you separate yourself from 95% of the population. That separation is called leadership. That separation is called leadership. You become the person people turn to when things are chaotic because they know you won't add to the chaos. You become the person who gets promoted because you don't lose your composure under stress. You become the partner people want to build a life with because you don't turn every disagreement into a war. But this separation comes at a cost. The crowd won't understand. Some people will interpret your pause as weakness. Some will push harder, trying to provoke a reaction. Some will accuse you of being passive, cold, or avoidant. Let them. Their opinion of your pause is irrelevant. What matters is the outcome 6 months from now. What matters is the reputation you're building. What matters is the person you're becoming. You don't need their permission to wait. You don't need their approval to use the 24-hour rule. You don't need to explain yourself to people who are still trapped in reactive patterns. Your job is not to convince them. Your job is to stay committed to the system that works, regardless of the social pressure around you. This commitment will be tested daily. Someone will try to bait you into reacting. Someone will mistake your pause for weakness and push harder. Someone will tell you that waiting makes you a pushover. And in those moments, you will remember this. Respect comes from restraint, not reaction. But even when you're committed, even when you understand the social pressure and refuse to cave to it, there will be moments when the 24-hour rule feels impossible. When the trigger is so intense, the situation so urgent, the emotion so overwhelming that waiting seems like torture. That's exactly what we're addressing next. How to hold the line when holding the line feels like the hardest thing you've ever done. Chapter 6. What happens in the brain during the 24-hour wait? You need to understand exactly what's happening inside your brain during the 24-hour wait. Because when you're in hour 2, when the anger is still white hot and every cell in your body is screaming at you to respond right now, you need to know why you're waiting. You need to trust the process. And trust comes from understanding the biology. This chapter is your roadmap through the 24 hours. What's happening at each stage? Why the early hours are dangerous when the shift occurs, and why by hour 24, you're operating from a completely different neurological state than where you started. Let's begin with the storm. Hour 1 through 6. This is the cortisol peak. The moment you get triggered, your amygdala floods your system with stress hormones. Cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. These chemicals surge through your bloodstream in seconds. Your heart rate spikes. Your blood pressure rises. Your muscles tense. Your breathing becomes shallow. But here's what most people don't realize. These hormones don't disappear quickly. Cortisol, in particular, has a half-life of 60 to 90 minutes. That means even 90 minutes after the trigger, half of the cortisol is still circulating in your system. It takes 4 to 6 hours for cortisol levels to begin dropping significantly. During those first 6 hours, you're operating under chemical influence. Your perception is distorted. Everything feels more personal than it is. Everything feels more urgent than it is. Everything feels more catastrophic than it is. This is not exaggeration. This is documented neuroscience. High cortisol levels impair your hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory and context. You literally cannot access past experiences that might give you perspective. You can't remember that you've survived similar situations before. You can't recall that this person has criticized you before and it didn't end your career. All you can feel is the threat. Right now, immediate, overwhelming. This is the worst possible time to make decisions, send messages, or have difficult conversations. Your brain is literally incapable of objective evaluation right now. You're trying to solve a problem with a tool that's broken. You're trying to see clearly through a fog of stress chemistry. It cannot work. This is why the 24-hour rule is non-negotiable. You're chemically compromised. You're chemically compromised. And any decision you make from this state will reflect that compromise. I've watched people destroy careers, relationships, and opportunities in these first 6 hours. The email sent at 2 a.m. The text message fired off during lunch. The confrontation initiated within an hour of being triggered. Every single one of these moves was made by someone whose cortisol was still flooding their system. They thought they were thinking clearly. They weren't. Their biology was lying to them. So in hours 1 through 6, your only job is to survive without reacting. That's it. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to craft the perfect response. Don't try to see both sides. Just survive. Use the techniques from Chapter 4. Recognize the trigger. Create distance. Breathe. Wait. The storm will pass. But it needs time. Now let's talk about the shift. Hour 6 through 18. This is where everything changes. As cortisol begins to drop, something remarkable happens. Your prefrontal cortex comes back online. This is the rational part of your brain. The part that thinks strategically, considers consequences, evaluates options, and makes decisions aligned with your long-term goals. When your prefrontal cortex reactivates, you start seeing perspectives you couldn't access before. The criticism that felt like a personal attack 6 hours ago now looks like feedback about a specific project. The comment that felt intentionally hurtful now seems like someone having a bad day and taking it out on you. The situation that felt like the end of the world now appears as a temporary setback. This is called cognitive reappraisal. Your brain is literally reprocessing the event with different information and different chemistry. The story you were telling yourself in hour 2, they're trying to destroy me. This is proof I'm not good enough. Everyone thinks I'm incompetent. Begins to fall apart. New stories emerge. More accurate stories. Stories that include context, nuance, and possibility. This cognitive shift is automatic if you give your brain time. You don't have to force it. You don't have to do therapy exercises or positive affirmations. You just have to wait. Your biology will do the work. But you cannot rush this process. Biology has its timeline. Respect it or pay the price. I've seen this shift happen countless times. The person who is ready to quit their job in hour 3 starts seeing solutions by hour 12. The couple who were convinced their relationship was over in hour 5 starts remembering why they chose each other by hour 15. The individual who is crafting a scorched earth response in hour 2 deletes the entire draft by hour 18 because it no longer represents how they actually feel. The shift is real. The shift is reliable. but only if you wait long enough to experience it. Now we arrive at the destination. Hour 18 through 24. This is clarity. This is strategic choice. This is mastery. By the time 24 hours have passed, you're operating from a completely different neurological state than where you started. The emotional charge is gone. Not suppressed. Not buried. Gone. Metabolized. Your cortisol has returned to baseline. Your amygdala is no longer in control. Your prefrontal cortex is fully online. You can now evaluate options rationally. You can consider long-term consequences. You can ask yourself the questions that actually matter. What outcome do I want? What will my best self do here? Is a response even necessary? And here's what's remarkable. In many cases, by hour 24, you won't even want to respond the way you did in hour 1. The clever comeback you were crafting, it now seems petty. The defensive email you were composing, it now feels unnecessary. The confrontation you were planning, it now looks like it would create more problems than it solves. This is where mastery lives. This is where you win. Because you're no longer reacting to the trigger, you're responding to reality. You're no longer controlled by emotion. You're guided by strategy. You're no longer making decisions to relieve temporary discomfort. You're making choices that serve your long-term goals. The 24-hour rule doesn't suppress your response. It upgrades it. It upgrades it every single time. It upgrades it every single time. You go from having one option, react immediately, to having 10 options. Better options. Strategic options. Options that preserve relationships instead of destroying them. Options that build your reputation instead of damaging it. Options that move you toward your goals instead of away from them. This is the gift of waiting. Not weakness. Not avoidance. Upgrade. Evolution. Transformation from reactive to responsive. From controlled to in control. But knowing what happens during the 24 hours is one thing. Actually enduring those 24 hours when the trigger is massive, when the pressure is intense, when everything in you is screaming to react right now. That's the real test. And that test has a specific set of challenges that we need to address head on. Next, we're going to the hardest part. When the 24-hour rule feels impossible and why you do it anyway. Chapter 7. When the 24-hour rule feels impossible and why you do it anyway. There will be moments when the 24-hour rule feels impossible. When waiting feels like torture. When every instinct in your body is screaming that this situation is different. This trigger is too big. This circumstance actually does require an immediate response. This chapter is for those moments. Because those moments are where the real battle is won or lost. Let's start with the lie your brain will tell you. The urgency illusion. It sounds like this. If I don't respond right now, they'll think I'm weak. If I don't act immediately, I'll lose this opportunity forever. If I don't defend myself in this moment, the lie will become the truth and everyone will believe it. These thoughts feel urgent. They feel true. They feel like wisdom. They are none of those things. They are your amygdala's survival mechanism trying to force a reaction. Your primitive brain evolved to respond to immediate physical threats. When a predator attacked, waiting meant death. Speed meant survival. That wiring is still in your brain, and it activates the same way for emotional threats as it did for physical ones. But here's what your amygdala doesn't understand. This is not a predator. This is a text message. This is criticism. This is a difficult conversation. And urgency is almost always an illusion. Almost nothing actually requires an immediate emotional response. Almost nothing actually requires an immediate emotional response. Think about the last time you felt this urgency. The situation that absolutely could not wait. The response that had to be sent right now, or all would be lost. What happened? Did the world end because you waited? Did the opportunity actually evaporate? Did people actually lose all respect for you because you took time to think? No. In most cases, nothing catastrophic happened. And in the cases where waiting did have consequences, those consequences were almost always smaller than the damage an immediate reaction would have caused. The urgency was an illusion. Your brain was lying to you to force a reaction that would have made everything worse. Let me give you a specific example that happens in the professional world constantly. You receive a job offer. It's a good position, better pay, more responsibility. But there's a catch. The hiring manager tells you they need an answer within 24 hours. We're moving quickly on this. Other candidates are interested. If you want the position, we need to know by tomorrow. The pressure is immediate. Your brain kicks into panic mode. If I don't say yes right now, they'll offer it to someone else. If I ask for more time, they'll think I'm not serious. This is my chance, and I can't let it slip away. Every thought is pushing you toward an immediate yes. But here's the reality. Any organization that won't give you reasonable time to make a life-changing decision is showing you exactly how they'll treat you as an employee. Think about what they're actually communicating. We need you to make a major life decision, where you'll spend 40+ hours per week, what you'll be paid, what your career trajectory looks like in 24 hours without time to evaluate the offer, negotiate terms, or consider your options. That's not respect. That's manipulation. That's a pressure tactic designed to force a reactive decision instead of a strategic one. And if they're willing to manipulate you before you even start, what will they do once you're on their payroll? The 24-hour rule reveals character, both yours and theirs. When you say, I appreciate the offer, but I need more time to evaluate this properly. I'll have an answer for you within a week. You learn everything you need to know. A real opportunity respects your need to evaluate. A real employer understands that good candidates don't make impulsive decisions. They'll wait. They'll work with you. They'll value the fact that you're thoughtful and strategic. But a manipulative employer will push back. They'll increase the pressure. They'll threaten to move on to other candidates. And that's your answer. That's them showing you who they are. And you should believe them. Walk away. Any job that requires you to abandon your decision-making process is not a job worth having. The same principle applies to every area of your life. The relationship that demands you respond to every text within minutes or you don't care. The friend who needs you to take their side immediately in a conflict or you're not really their friend. The family member who requires you to make a major commitment on the spot or they'll be disappointed. These are all urgency illusions. These are all manipulation tactics designed to bypass your rational decision-making and force a reactive choice. And the 24-hour rule exposes every single one of them. But here's where it gets hard. The discipline to wait when it's hardest is what separates you. Anyone can use the 24-hour rule when the stakes are low, when the trigger is minor, when no one's watching, when the emotional charge is manageable. That's easy. That's the practice round. The real test comes when the trigger is massive, when your reputation feels like it's on the line, when the criticism is public and everyone is watching to see how you'll respond, when your partner says something so hurtful that every cell in your body wants to fire back, when the injustice is so clear that staying silent feels like complicity. That's when the rule matters most. That's when waiting saves your life, your career, your relationships. That's when the difference between reacting and responding determines whether you move forward or stay stuck for the next 6 months, dealing with the consequences of 60 seconds of emotional release. I'll tell you something that might be hard to hear. The moments when the 24-hour rule feels most impossible are the moments when you need it most desperately. The intensity of your urge to react is directly proportional to how badly you'll regret reacting. The stronger the pull toward immediate response, the more damage that response will cause. This is why you do it anyway. Do it especially then, when it feels impossible, when every voice in your head is screaming at you to act now, when the social pressure is massive, when your ego is wounded and demanding vindication, when the urgency illusion is at its most convincing. You wait. You hold the line. You refuse to be manipulated by your own biology or by external pressure. Because you understand something that reactive people never learn. Temporary discomfort is always better than permanent consequences. Always. The discipline to wait when it's hardest is what separates you from everyone who stays stuck. It separates you. It separates you. This is not about being perfect. This is not about never feeling the urge to react. This is about having the strength to feel that urge and choosing differently anyway. But discipline is built, not born. You don't just decide one day to have the discipline to wait through impossible moments. You train for it. You practice. You build the capacity over time through repetition and commitment. That training process, how to actually build a nervous system that defaults to pause instead of reaction. That's exactly what we're covering next. Chapter 8. Training your nervous system to default to pause. Here's the truth about reactivity. It's not who you are. It's what you've practiced. And anything you've practiced can be unpracticed. Anything you've trained your nervous system to do automatically can be retrained to do something different. This chapter is about that retraining. This is about building a nervous system that defaults to pause instead of reaction. Reactivity is a habit, and habits can be reprogrammed. Your current default is reaction because you've practiced it thousands of times. Every single time you snap back at someone who criticized you. Every time you sent that angry text within seconds of reading something that triggered you. Every time you made an impulsive decision while emotional. Every single one of those moments was practice. You were strengthening a neural pathway. You were training your brain that this is what we do when triggered. We react immediately. Your brain doesn't judge whether this pattern serves you or destroys you. It just recognizes patterns and makes them automatic. That's neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated behavior. The same mechanism that made you reactive can make you responsive, but it requires the same thing: repetition, consistency, and time. The good news is this: you can build a new default. The pause can become automatic. Not through willpower. Willpower fails under stress. Through practice. Through training your nervous system so thoroughly that waiting becomes easier than reacting. So automatic that you don't have to think about it anymore. You just do it. But you have to commit to the training. You have to use the 24-hour rule until it becomes as natural as breathing. Until waiting is your first instinct, not your last resort. This doesn't happen in a week. This doesn't happen because you read this audiobook and feel inspired. This happens through daily, consistent practice over months. Let's talk about how to build that practice. You don't start with the hardest triggers. You don't wait until someone attacks you publicly or your partner says something devastating and then try to implement the 24-hour rule for the first time. That's like trying to run a marathon without ever training. You'll fail, and then you'll convince yourself the system doesn't work. You start small. You start with micro delays before micro decisions. These are the daily, low-stakes moments where you can practice inserting space between stimulus and response, where you can build the neural pathway without the emotional intensity that makes it feel impossible. Here's your daily practice. Before responding to any message, text, email, social media comment, wait 10 minutes. Not 24 hours, just 10 minutes. Set a timer if you need to. Read the message, feel whatever you feel, then put your phone down and wait. 10 minutes. Then respond. This does two things. First, it trains your nervous system that you don't have to respond immediately. That waiting is an option. That the world doesn't end when you insert a delay. Second, it gives your prefrontal cortex just enough time to come online. 10 minutes isn't long enough for cortisol to fully metabolize, but it's long enough to shift from pure reaction to considered response. Practice this every single day. Every message. No exceptions. Over weeks and months, this micro delay becomes automatic. You stop feeling the compulsion to respond immediately. The pause starts to feel natural. And when the big trigger comes, the one that would have destroyed you before, you already have the neural pathway built. The pause is already there. Here's another practice. Before making any purchase over $50, wait 1 hour. You see something you want. You feel the impulse to buy it right now. Instead, you wait 1 hour. If you still want it after an hour, buy it. But insert the delay first. This isn't about the purchase. This is about training your brain that impulses can be delayed, that the urgency you feel isn't always real, that you can sit with desire without immediately acting on it. This transfers to every other area of your life. The person who can wait an hour before buying something can wait 24 hours before responding to criticism. One more. Before agreeing to any request, someone asks for your time, your help, your commitment. Say these exact words: "Let me think about it and get back to you." Not maybe. Not I'll try. Just let me think about it. And actually think about it. Give yourself at least a few hours before responding. This practice does something crucial. It breaks the people-pleasing pattern of immediate yes. It trains you to value your own consideration time as much as other people's requests. It teaches your nervous system that pausing before committing is not rude, it's responsible. These micro-delays train your nervous system to insert space between stimulus and response. Over weeks and months, this practice rewires your brain. The pause becomes instinctive. The pause becomes instinctive. Now let's add the physical techniques. Because your nervous system doesn't just live in your thoughts, it lives in your body. And you can use your body to override the stress response in real time. When triggered, before any action, take 6 deep breaths. Not shallow breathing. Deep, intentional, controlled breathing. Here's the pattern. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Exhale through your mouth for 6 counts. Repeat 6 times. Why does this work? Because it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your nervous system responsible for calm, rest, and recovery. When you lengthen your exhale, you send a signal to your brain that you're safe, that this is not a life or death situation, that you can afford to slow down. This physically overrides the stress response. It interrupts the amygdala hijack. I've seen people completely transform their reactivity with this one technique. The executive who used to explode in meetings now takes 6 breaths before responding to any challenge. The parent who used to yell at their kids now breathes first. The couple who used to escalate every argument now both pause and breathe when tension rises. It's simple. It's physical. It works. Pair the breathing with a grounding question. As you breathe, ask yourself, will this matter in a year? Not, is this fair? Not, am I right? Those questions keep you in the triggered state. Will this matter in a year? This question provides perspective. It reminds you that most triggers are temporary. Most conflicts are minor. Most reactions create consequences that outlast the trigger by months or years. These tools are not optional. They are the bridge between your reactive past and your responsive future. Use them daily. Use them religiously. Use them until they become you. Until breathing before responding is as automatic as blinking. Until asking, will this matter in a year, is your first thought, not your last resort. You are building a new nervous system, one that defaults to pause, one that inserts space before action, one that responds from clarity instead of reacting from chaos. This is not personality change. This is neurological retraining. And it's available to you starting today. But training your nervous system is only half the transformation. The other half is understanding what this training creates in your actual life. The relationships, the career, the reputation you build when you stop reacting and start responding. That's what we're covering next. The tangible, measurable results of mastering the pause. Chapter 9. The relationships, career, and life you build when you stop reacting. Let's talk about what actually happens when you stop reacting. Not the theory, not the philosophy, the concrete, measurable changes in your relationships, your career, and the quality of your entire life. Because the 24-hour rule isn't just damage control. It's not just about avoiding consequences. It's about building something entirely different. Something most people never experience because they're too busy putting out fires they started with their own reactivity. Non-reactive people are magnets for opportunity and trust. When you stop reacting, people notice. They don't always comment on it. They don't always tell you directly. But they notice, and they adjust their behavior toward you accordingly. Colleagues start bringing you into sensitive conversations because they know you won't explode. They know they can share difficult information with you without you making it worse. They know you'll think before you speak. They know you won't turn a problem-solving session into a blame session. That trust is rare, and it's valuable. It's the difference between being kept in the loop and being kept at arm's length. Friends confide in you because you don't make their problems about your feelings. When someone shares something painful or complicated with you, they're not worried you'll react defensively, take it personally, or make them manage your emotions on top of their own. They can be vulnerable with you. They can tell you hard truths. They can ask for real advice. That kind of friendship where people feel safe being honest is what everyone wants and almost nobody has. You become that person by not reacting. Leaders promote you because you demonstrate emotional regulation under pressure. This is not speculation. This is observable reality in every organization. When a leadership position opens, the decision makers ask one critical question: who can handle stress without falling apart? They're not looking for the most talented person. They're not looking for the hardest worker. They're looking for the person who stays calm when everything is chaos. The person who doesn't escalate conflict. The person who thinks strategically even when triggered. Non-reactivity is the most underrated career and relationship accelerant. It compounds in ways reactive people never experience. It compounds in ways reactive people never experience. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in a real workplace scenario. Two employees. We'll call them Sarah and Marcus. Similar experience. Similar skills. Both competent. Both hardworking. But completely different response patterns. Sarah reacts. When her manager gives her feedback, she gets defensive. When a colleague questions her approach, she takes it personally and pushes back. When a project doesn't go as planned, she deflects blame and makes excuses. When there's tension in a meeting, she escalates it with sharp comments and frustrated body language. Sarah doesn't think she's reactive. She thinks she's standing up for herself and not letting people walk over her. Marcus responds. When his manager gives him feedback, he listens fully before speaking. When a colleague questions his approach, he considers whether the question has merit before defending his position. When a project doesn't go as planned, he takes accountability and focuses on solutions. When there's tension in a meeting, he pauses, asks clarifying questions, and de-escalates through calm presence. Marcus doesn't think of himself as special. He just uses the 24-hour rule consistently. A leadership position opens. Sarah and Marcus both apply. On paper, they're equally qualified, but the decision isn't made on paper. It's made based on who the leadership team trusts to handle pressure, who they can imagine in a room with angry clients, difficult stakeholders, high-stakes negotiations, who will represent the company well when things get hard. The choice is obvious. Marcus gets promoted. Sarah doesn't. And Sarah will probably never know exactly why. She'll be told it was a tough decision or that Marcus had a slight edge in leadership qualities. But the real reason is simple. Leaders don't need more reactivity. They need more stability. They need people who don't make problems bigger. They need people who can be trusted with authority because they've demonstrated control over themselves. The 24-hour rule doesn't just protect you from damage. It positions you for elevation. Calmness is currency. Calmness is currency. And in a world full of reactive people, calm people are rare enough to be invaluable. This same pattern plays out in relationships. The partner who doesn't react to every trigger becomes the partner people want to build a life with. Because building a life together means navigating thousands of difficult moments: financial stress, family conflicts, health scares, parenting challenges, career setbacks. Reactive people turn every difficult moment into two problems: the original problem plus the damage from their reaction. Responsive people address the problem without creating additional damage. Over time, this difference compounds. The reactive couple is stuck in a cycle where they can't solve problems because they're too busy repairing the damage from how they fought about the problems. The responsive couple builds trust, solves issues collaboratively, and actually moves forward. Same challenges, different outcomes. The difference is response patterns. Here's the bigger truth. The life you build is a direct reflection of your response patterns. Reactive people build reactive lives, full of drama, conflict, regret, and chaos. They're constantly dealing with consequences, constantly repairing relationships, constantly explaining why they said what they said or did what they did. They live in a state of perpetual damage control, and they wonder why life feels so hard. Responsive people build responsive lives, full of intention, trust, respect, and growth. They're not perfect. They face the same triggers as everyone else. But they don't multiply their problems with their reactions. They address situations cleanly. They preserve relationships while handling conflict. They make decisions they're proud of 6 months later. Their lives feel more stable not because they have fewer problems, but because they don't create new problems with their responses. Every relationship you have, every career opportunity that comes your way, every major life decision you make, all of it stems from how you handle triggers. Master the pause, and you master the quality of your entire existence. This is not exaggeration. This is not motivational fluff. This is causation. Your responses determine your reality. Your responses determine your reality. Think about the most successful, respected, trusted people you know personally. The ones who seem to navigate life with less drama and more results. The ones people turn to for advice. The ones who lead without announcing it. What do they all have in common? They don't react. They respond. They pause. They wait. They choose. You can become that person, not through talent or luck or personality, through practice, through commitment to the 24-hour rule until it becomes who you are, not just what you do. And that transformation, from someone who uses the rule to someone who embodies it, that's what we're addressing in the final chapter. The shift from technique to identity, from practice to permanent change. Chapter 10. The 24-hour rule is not a technique, it's an identity. We've reached the final chapter, and this is where everything comes together. This is where the 24-hour rule stops being a technique you're trying to master and becomes the core of who you are. Because here's the truth that changes everything. Techniques fail under pressure. Identity holds. Let me explain what I mean. A technique is something you do. It's external. It's a tool you pick up when you need it and put down when you don't. It requires effort, decision, willpower, and under extreme pressure. When the trigger is massive, when the stakes are high, when your emotions are volcanic, techniques fail. Willpower runs out. Decision-making breaks down. You revert to your default patterns. But identity is different. Identity is who you are. It's internal. It's not something you do. It's something you are. And identity doesn't fail under pressure. It becomes more clear, more defined, more automatic. When your identity is, I am someone who does not react, you don't have to make a decision in the triggered moment. You're not fighting against your impulses. You're simply being yourself. The 24-hour rule only works permanently when it stops being something you try to do and becomes who you are. You are not someone who is working on reacting less. That's still technique thinking. That's still treating reactivity as your default and non-reactivity as the goal you're striving toward. That framework keeps you in a constant battle with yourself. Instead, you're someone who does not react. Period. That's the identity shift. You don't react to triggers. That's not what you do anymore. That's not who you are. When someone attacks you, you don't react because you're not a person who reacts. When pressure mounts, you don't make impulsive decisions because you're not a person who acts impulsively. When emotions surge, you don't let them control your behavior because you're not a person who is controlled by emotions. This identity shift is everything. When your identity is aligned with non-reactivity, triggers lose their power. You don't have to fight the urge to react. You simply are not that person anymore. The urge might still arise. The emotion might still be intense. But there's no internal conflict. No battle between who you want to be and what you want to do. Because who you are and what you do are the same thing. Think about it this way. If you identify as a non-smoker, you don't stand outside a bar fighting the urge to smoke. You don't use willpower to resist cigarettes. You just don't smoke. That's not what you do. It's not who you are. The same principle applies here. When you identify as a non-reactive person, you don't fight the urge to fire back. You don't use willpower to stop yourself from sending that angry text. You just don't do it, because that's not who you are anymore. The transformation from reactive to responsive is visible and irreversible. People who truly embody the 24-hour rule carry themselves differently. You can see it in how they move through the world. Their tone is steady, even when discussing difficult topics. Their decisions are considered, even under time pressure. Their presence is calming, even in chaotic environments. They don't need to announce their self-control. They don't need to tell people, I'm not reacting right now, or I'm using the 24-hour rule. It radiates. It's visible in their body language, their word choice, their energy. Other people feel safer around them, more comfortable, more willing to be honest, because there's no fear that this person will explode, escalate, or make the situation worse. And once you experience the peace, clarity, and results of living this way, you cannot go back. This is what I mean by irreversible. Once you've felt what it's like to move through life without being jerked around by every trigger, once you've experienced the respect that comes from consistent non-reactivity, once you've seen the opportunities that open up when people trust you with sensitive information, you cannot return to reactive patterns without feeling disgusted with yourself. Reactivity starts to feel primitive, exhausting, beneath you. You see other people react, and you recognize what you used to be. You feel compassion for them because you understand the prison they're in, but you also feel grateful that you're no longer trapped there. The transformation is complete, and it's permanent. So here's where we are. You are now the person who waits. You are now the person who chooses. This is your new identity, not your aspiration, not your goal, your identity. Right now, today, this moment. When triggered, you wait. That's what you do. That's who you are. When someone criticizes you publicly, you don't defend yourself immediately. You wait 24 hours and then decide if a response is even necessary. When you receive a message that makes your blood boil, you don't fire back. You create distance, breathe, and let your biology reset before engaging. When pressured to make an immediate decision, you pause. You say, I need time to consider this without apology or explanation. You refuse to be rushed into choices that will affect your life for months or years. When the world is screaming at you to act now, you remain unmoved because you're someone who chooses deliberately, not someone who reacts impulsively. When provoked, you consider. You don't take the bait. You don't get pulled into arguments that serve no purpose. You don't let other people's chaos become your chaos. You observe. You evaluate. You decide what deserves your energy and what doesn't. And most things don't. This is not a skill you practice occasionally. This is not something you do when you remember or when it's convenient. This is who you have become. The person who waits. The person who chooses. The person who controls themselves even when everything around them is out of control. And everyone around you will adjust to this new version of you. Some will respect it immediately. They'll recognize strength when they see it. They'll trust you more. Confide in you more. Seek your counsel more. These are your people. The ones who value stability over drama. Depth over performance. Character over reaction. Some will test it. They'll push harder, trying to provoke the old reactive version of you. They'll mistake your pause for weakness and attempt to exploit it. They'll escalate to see if you'll break. Let them test. Every test you pass makes your identity stronger. Every trigger you don't react to is proof that you've changed. Eventually, they'll stop testing, or they'll leave. Either way, you win. But all will recognize it. Even the ones who don't respect it. Even the ones who test it. Everyone will see that you are different. That you don't operate the way most people do. That you've mastered something they haven't. And that recognition changes how they interact with you. How they speak to you. What they expect from you. What they're willing to invest in you. You're no longer controlled by external triggers. You're the one in control. You're the one in control. Always. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The beginning of a life where you're no longer at the mercy of your impulses, other people's provocations, or the chaos around you. A life where every major decision is made from clarity, not emotion. Where every relationship is built on trust, not reactivity. Where every opportunity is seized because people know they can count on you to stay steady under pressure. The 24-hour rule is now your identity. You don't use it. You are it. You don't practice non-reactivity. You embody it. And that embodiment will compound for the rest of your life, creating results that reactive people will never understand and never achieve. You waited. You chose. You became. Now go live as the person who has mastered their mind, their reactions, and their life. Everything you've learned here is now yours. Protect it. Practice it. Become it so completely that you forget you were ever any other way. This is who you are now. The person who does not react. The person who waits. The person who wins. Always. So here's where we are. You now know the exact neurological reason you've been losing control. The amygdala hijack that turns you into a reactor instead of a decision maker. You now have the 24-hour rule. The mandatory delay that lets your biology reset, your cortisol drop, and your rational brain come back online. You've seen the cost of instant reactions and the compounding power of strategic responses. You understand that this is not about suppressing emotion. It's about refusing to let emotion make permanent decisions. You've learned the implementation steps, the brain science behind the weight, and the identity shift that makes this permanent. Now here's what happens next. You'll be triggered today, tomorrow, this week. Someone will push your buttons. A situation will demand an immediate reaction. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. React like you always have, or wait like you now know you must. This is the test. This is where theory becomes identity. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, commit to the 24-hour rule with 0 exceptions. Every trigger, every impulse, every text, email, conversation, 24 hours. No reaction before then. None. Track it. Journal it. Watch what happens when you stop being controlled and start being in control. Your old self reacted. Your new self responds. The 24-hour rule is now yours. Use it. Protect it. Become it. Everything changes when you do. You've just completed Train Your Mind to Not React. The 24-hour rule that changes everything. You now have the complete system, the neuroscience, the implementation steps, the identity shift, everything you need to stop being controlled by triggers and start controlling your own life. But here's what happens next. You take action. You commit to the 24-hour rule starting today. You practice it until it becomes who you are, and you transform. If this audiobook gave you value, if you're ready to become the non-reactive version of yourself, do 3 things right now. Hit that like button. Subscribe to LAH Audiobook so you never miss content that actually changes your life. And share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's trapped in reactive patterns and doesn't even know it. This is LAH Audiobook. We don't create content for entertainment. We create content for transformation. You've been equipped. Now go execute. The person who waits is the person who wins. Be that person, starting now.